Afternoon. This is Wednesday the 22nd, and winter has officially started.
But it's sunshine.
And it's sunshining. It's only 61 degrees, though.
People don't think that's warm.
Well, we came from 70-degree weather in Aelot for a week, and that was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
But today we are going to look at chapter 6, which follows chapter 5. We did chapter 7 and 8,
Mm-hmm.
which preceded chapter 5, but I didn't get that until I started looking ahead. And so now I've got them in the right order.
We'll still make a chart for people to look at so they can see after we're done.
How we do that?
I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Okay, I'll let you be the engineer. Okay, so chapter 6, Babylon has fallen, and it fell right after the handwriting on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And Daniel was put third in the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
His reputation follows him. Let's look at it. And Darius the Mede, and I think that is called Darius in some English Bibles, but this one calls him Darius, which is the way the Hebrew Darius, yeah, that's the way they would pronounce it. He received the kingdom when he was about 62 years old. He's the first king after the fall of Babylon. Darius decided to appoint 120 governors over his kingdom to be located throughout his kingdom. That's number, I remember reading that in Esther, and that's quite a bit later. So they kept that number of entities that made up the kingdom. And above them were 3 ministers, of whom Daniel was one, to whom the governors would give an accounting, so that the royal treasure not be burdened. Now the aforementioned Daniel surpassed the ministers and the governors because of his extraordinary spirit.
This tells a lot about the quality of Daniel, how he was respected.
Yeah, that's why I think that his reputation followed him. People knew. This king knew.
Well, I remember it was when the handwriting on the wall, it was his grandmother, Queen,
yeah,
that came out and said, "Don't you know about this, Daniel?"
Yeah, right, exactly. She remembered. And so the king intended to appoint him over the whole kingdom. He's going to make him number 1.
Wow.
Then the ministers and governors sought to find a fault against Daniel regarding the states of affairs of the state. But they could find no fault or corruption because he was faithful. So no error or corruption was found regarding him. Now, why would these guys do this? I look at this, and, I've read this for years, since childhood.
Yeah.
With today's politics,
Oh, yeah.
it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
This goes on and has been going on for centuries. Somebody
doesn't like it.
is not in charge that wants to be in charge,
Yeah.
and gets jealous of the guy that's at the top. So they've tried to find a way to bring him down so they can get that place. But do they get that place? Not usually. Or if so, only for a short time.
Yeah.
So these guys, what they do then is they think up stories. They connive. Then they act also sincere,
Mm-hmm.
So let's see how they do it here. Then those men said, "We will not find any fault against this Daniel unless we find it in the law of his God." So they've got that's the basis. We got to find something he's doing wrong by his own law.
Yeah.
Then these ministers and governors excitedly mobbed the king and said to him, they got their plan all figured out. Now they go to the king. O Daravesh, the king, live forever. No, this sounds like they really love him. All the ministers of the kingdom, the supervisors and the governors, the counselors, the administrators have resolved together. Boy, that's all of them. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That the king should enact a royal ordinance and binding obligation that for 30 days whoever shall make a request of any god or any man other than you, O king, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, you think, well, that seems so crude. Lion's den? But lion's den and furnace were two things that the ancients had that they used to punish people. So this is, I mean, they keep these lions on hand in a den, and when they want to get rid of someone, they throw them to the lions. And so when David says the lions have surrounded me, he knows what he's talking about.
We might think hanging and electrocution are severe punishments, but boy, be tossed to the lions or be put in the fire. Oh my goodness.
But Rome picked up on this. They threw people to the lions in the gladiators.
I know people watched it, yeah.
But they made more of a sport of it than even these guys did. It's terrible. Then these ministers and governors, let's see, I read that. So they say to the king, O king, this man, anybody that does this should be thrown to the lion's den. Now, O king, enact the obligation and issue a written decree that cannot be changed as a law of Media and Persia that cannot be annulled. Okay, a lot of times people annul things. They think, well, my word, I'm powerful enough, I can supersede anything that's written in a decree or a constitution, or if I can just get people under my thumb, I can do whatever I want. And that's what these guys thought they could do. But King Daravesh probably has a little weak spot in his heart for himself.
Mm-hmm.
Consenting to all this, King Daravesh issued the obligation in a written decree.
This would be good.
Now imagine that. Nobody's going to ask anything except of me.
Yeah.
And I can tell them what to do, whether they're right or wrong. Now when Daniel learned that the law had been issued in a written decree, he went to his house where he had open windows. Like these windows are open all the time. In his attic, facing Jerusalem.
Where I thought nobody could see him.
Yeah. Where 3 times a day he would kneel down and pray and give thanks before his God, just as he had always done before this.
This is interesting too, because this is a picture of what Jews have done in exile without the temple all these years.
Exactly.
They prayed 3 times a day.
Well, they prayed 3 times a day when they had the temple.
And this is where the one place, not the only place, but one place, where the Bible has oral tradition.
Mm-hmm.
It's not written in the Torah. You have to pray 3 times a day.
No. But Solomon said in his dedication prayer, even if this temple is gone, if anyone in the world faces this temple and prays to you, you, God, hear from heaven and answer their prayer.
And Jews around the world, when they pray, figure out what direction is toward the temple.
Yeah, they could be on the west side, or they could be on the east side, they could be north, or they could be south. Mm-hmm. Wherever they know that the temple is situated, that's the way they turn.
Mm-hmm.
So basically in America, the synagogues are all fixed so that when they're praying in the shul, everybody's facing east.
Yep. And we have to remember that for the Jews, maybe for others too, but for the Jews, the focus of everything is Jerusalem
Yeah,
and the temple.
exactly. So that's what Daniel did. He does this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't going to change just because some decree had been made. Then those men formed an excited mob and found Daniel petitioning and supplicating his God. Oh, now they got the goods on him. Then they approached the king and said concerning the king's edict, "Did you not issue an obligation in a written decree that for 30 days any man who makes a request from any god or man other than you, O king, would be thrown into the lion's den?" The king answered and said, "The matter is valid as a law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be annulled." Thereupon they answered and said, before the king, "Daniel, who is of the exiles of Yehuda, has not paid any attention to you, O king, nor to the obligation that you issued a written decree, and 3 times a day he makes his petitions."
Now they're saying this against the guy that the king had decided to make almost in charge of the whole kingdom.
Yeah, right, exactly. The moment the king heard about the matter, he was very displeased.
Sure.
He was displeased probably for several reasons. One, he could see what was behind the decree,
Mm-hmm.
and he fell for it when he shouldn't have.
Yep. But
So
boy, once he signed that look at the next phrase.
And he made up his mind to rescue Daniel.
Yeah.
Until sunset, he made
How
efforts
can I
to say,
Daniel? How can I get him out of this?
"I've got to figure out something," but he couldn't figure anything out. At that point, these men excitedly mobbed the king and said to the king, "Know, king, that the law of Media and the Persians is that no obligation and ordinance which a king enacts can be changed." Just a note here about Esther, the book of Esther.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that they had reversed the decree that was sent out by the king.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't.
Huh.
Another decree was sent out that whoever was an enemy of the Jews and tried to kill them, the Jews had the right to fight back. And that's how they overcame being killed and annihilated.
Wow.
So you couldn't change the decrees that were made in Medes and the Persians.
What verse are we on now?
Now I'm at the. They've told him. Verse 17.
Okay.
Then the king issued a command, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. Poor king had to issue a command that did just what he didn't want it to happen. The king spoke and said to Daniel,
It must have been before he got thrown in.
yeah, just before, "Your God," he's talking to Daniel, "whom you serve constantly, rescue you."
It's like a prayer.
It is. I think it's interesting that he thinks Daniel, who's so devoted to this God, must have some power with him. And he hopes that will be the saving grace of his top man. And a stone was...
really, the only hope that the king had was the God of Daniel.
Exactly. He didn't know that, though. And a stone was brought and placed on the opening of the den. On the opening means that there was like a hole in the ground, and I don't know how he would have scrambled out of there.
Yeah.
But that's the way it was. They'd find a cave that went down instead of into. So, the stone was brought and placed on the opening of the den, which the king sealed with his own ring and with the rings of his nobles, so that nothing could be changed with regard to Daniel. Okay, now, if he had sealed it and the nobles didn't know about it, they could say, when he brought him out, they could say, "Oh, he never put him in." But these guys had to put their ring on the seal
Oh,
too.
is it
So they
guaranteed?
knew that he was in there.
Mhm.
Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting.
Mhm.
They brought him no diversions, and sleep escaped him. In the morning the king rose at break of day and hurriedly went to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called out to Daniel in a pained voice. The king spoke and said, "Daniel, servant of the living God."
He knew what he knew about Daniel God.
He was a living one, not one of these fake
Yeah.
ones. "Was your God whom you served constantly be able to save you from the lions?" Then Daniel spoke to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel who shut the mouth of the lions so they could not harm me. For I have been found innocent before him and before you, O king. I have done no wrong."
This shows us again that there is a place for God's angels to help us in a time of need.
You can see that this was set up by God Almighty for him to be acknowledged by the Gentile. He wants the Gentile to know who he is. That's always the reason why he even allows Israel the problems they have. And I heard a rabbi say, generally speaking, we don't get problems from the weather or the environment. We get our problems from people beating up on us. And that is probably borne out by the stories we read in the Bible.
Well, yeah, it really it shows how powerful God is. And, even in the New Testament, it talks about Gentiles who were God-fearing and went to the synagogues.
Yes.
I think that's the reason.
So Daniel was brought out of the den, and no injury was found on him because he had faith in his God.
Mm-hmm.
And the king commanded they brought those men who had slandered Daniel and threw them into the lion's den along with their children and their wives. Even before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and shattered all their bones. Now, I don't think this
we're
is...
at verse 26, but to me it seems, I don't know, it seems a little harsh to me that the wives and the children had to also go into the lion's den when they probably didn't really have anything to do with this.
Right, exactly.
I understand.
And I don't think it's something that Daniel wanted, but the king was angry.
Yeah, you would guess so. But boy, that's...
Then Darius the king wrote to all peoples, nations, and speakers of all languages inhabiting the whole earth. That shows
the whole earth,
real conviction.
The whole earth except for China.
Well, all the known earth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Known earth.
May your peace abound. I have decreed that throughout the domain of my kingdom, people should fear and tremble before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and he endures forever.
It's quite a testimony about God.
Yeah.
Really a powerful testimony about God. I mean, everybody knows this story.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about this story.
Yeah, even on Jeopardy, people that aren't religious at all can answer some of these Bible stories. His kingdom is indestructible and his dominion is everlasting. He is rescuer and deliverer. He makes signs and wonders in the heaven and on the earth. It is he who rescued Daniel from the lions.
It just shows the importance of walking right before God and trusting him.
And that makes a testimony. And that's what the Israelites were supposed to be, a witness. So Daniel, who was righteous before he ever left Israel, meant that the righteous people in Israel, as well as the sinners, were all getting treated the same. They were treated as one whole body. So, and this Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Koresh the Persian. So we're going to run into a chapter now where Koresh is the king.
And Koresh is the one that let him go back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple.
Right. The first chapter of Ezra.
That's not in Daniel.
Yes, it is.
Is it?
You just don't know about it.
Oh, okay.
Because we're going to go to chapter 9 now, because this is the one that follows this.
Right.
But this tells us how long Daniel lived.
Oh.
He was an old man.
Yeah.
Even when he got thrown in the lion's den.
He must have been quite young when he.
Oh, my guess, I think I've heard they figure about 14 years of age.
When he first was chosen, yeah. Boy.
So that's quite interesting. Now, we'll finish there because that's the end of chapter 6. And everybody loves that chapter.
Yeah.
It's so remarkable how his faith didn't waver a bit. He didn't care whether the lions ate him or not, so to speak. He was more concerned about God being glorified.
Yeah.
And that's a real testimony of how we have to ask God to help us swallow our fears and stand firm.
Amen.
Especially in a world that is rife with so many problems.
But isn't it wonderful that it's recorded for us? It's in the Tanakh.
Yeah,
We
it
can read
is.
about it. Yeah?
It's wonderful. So have a good week, and we'll talk to you later.